Good evening, Virgo. Welcome back. Um, and thank you so much for being here. Uh, what I have for you today is not for everyone's ears. Take what resonates, leave what doesn't. Subscribe if this already feels like yours. Now listen carefully. Listen carefully, Virgo. There is a thread. You may not have seen it yet. It is thin enough to be overlooked thin, the way the finest silk is thin, which is to say, not fragile, but deceptive about its own strength. A thread that has been running through the fabric of your recent months, through decisions that seemed unrelated, through encounters that appeared coincidental, through the accumulation of small movements that looked from any single vantage point like nothing in particular. Pull it, not forcefully. The finest threads uh, do not respond well to force, but deliberately, with the specific patient attention of someone who has learned to trace a single filament through a complex weave without disturbing the surrounding cloth. Follow it backward through the months. Notice where it appears. Notice the pattern it traces when you allow yourself to see not each appearance individually, but the whole line of them together. The pattern points somewhere toward something that has been assembling itself at the edge of your peripheral vision for longer than you may realize. Something that was never going to announce itself through a single dramatic event, but was always going to arrive the way the finest things arrive, through the accumulation of threads into cloth, through the patient weaving of many small things into something that suddenly, when the light catches it at the right angle, reveals itself as something of extraordinary value. That cloth is nearly finished. And what it is worth when it is held up to the light, when the full complexity of what has been woven becomes visible, is going to surprise you. Let's talk about the quiet first, because the instruction to keep quiet is not incidental to what is coming. It is load bearing. It is the condition under which what is forming can complete itself. And understanding why requires understanding something about the nature of large financial movements, the way they behave in the period between their initiation and their arrival in your hands. Money in motion is sensitive to attention, not in the mystical sense, in the very practical sense that large sums moving through systems attract interference, attract the opinions of people whose opinions were not requested, attract the projections of people whose own relationship with financial scarcity or abundance colors everything they say with a bias they are not always aware of having. Attract the specific, well meaning, but corrosive energy of people who love you and are afraid for you, and whose fear has a way of installing itself in your own interior as doubt. Doubt in the period when something large is forming is expensive. It does not cost money directly, it costs something more foundational than money. It costs the quality of the decisions you make during the formation period. It costs the steadiness of the hand that is guiding the thread. It costs the clarity of vision that allows you to see the pattern rather than the individual stitches. The people who build significant wealth, not the people who receive it passively, but the people who build it, who participate in its creation, share one characteristic that is rarely discussed because it is not glamorous and does not translate well into the kind of advice that makes for comfortable conversation. They are quiet during the building. not secretive in the way of someone hiding something shameful. Quiet in the way of someone who understands that the formation stage of anything significant requires protection from the very thing that seems like it should enhance it: the enthusiasm, the sharing, the early announcement that transforms a private possibility into a public expectation. Public expectations have a way of becoming the thing a project has to manage rather than the thing a project can simply become. Keep the thread to yourself until the cloth is finished. What is forming? The honest answer is more than one thing simultaneously, and the threads are related in ways that are not yet fully visible. There is a direct thread, a specific financial opportunity or development that either already exists in nascent form in your life or is approaching it from a direction you may not yet be looking. Something that involves your skills, your accumulated knowledge, the specific combination of things you have learned to do well across the months and years that preceded this one. Something that pays in proportion to actual value delivered rather than in proportion to the hours logged or the performance of productivity that many financial arrangements reward. Value-based compensation. This is the textile it is woven from. The recognition by someone or some situation that what you bring is not interchangeable with what someone else might bring. That the specific, irreplaceable weave of your capabilities produces a cloth that cannot be replicated by a different weaver working with different threads. And that this non replicability has a price, a real, concrete, significant price that someone is prepared or preparing to pay. The enormous qualifier in the title is the part that requires care. Because enormous is relative. What is enormous for one person is unremarkable for another. What makes this enormous is not its absolute size, it is the size relative to what you have been receiving, the step change, the shift from one order of magnitude to another. The moment when the gap between your effort and your compensation finally narrows to something that corresponds to reality rather than to the undervaluing that may have characterized previous arrangements. You have been undervalued. That is the thread that runs through the whole backstory of what is approaching. The long period during which what you brought was taken at less than its actual worth, not always maliciously, not always consciously, but consistently. And the consistency of undervaluation has a way of becoming internalized over time, of teaching a person to price themselves in accordance with what they have been paid, rather than in accordance with what they actually deliver. What is coming is going to require you to reprice yourself before it arrives, not after before, because the opportunity will present itself at a size that your current self-pricing may try to compress into something smaller and more familiar. And if you allow that compression to happen, you will negotiate against yourself before the negotiation with anyone else has even begun. The second thread runs parallel to the first and will become visible as the first develops. It is relational. Someone in your orbit, someone whose own financial or professional trajectory you have not been closely tracking, possibly someone whose life you have not been paying particular attention to because the focus of your energy has been elsewhere. This person is either already connected to what is forming or will become connected to it in a way that is not yet obvious. Not a benefactor in the fairy godparent sense. Something more practical and more interesting than that. A person who has access to something, information, connection, a position in a system that becomes relevant to your situation in a way that neither of you may have anticipated. A person who, when the timing aligns, is simply in the right position to connect what they have to what you are building. Watch for this person not by looking for them. Looking is the wrong posture. Watch by being present and attentive in your existing relationships. By showing up to conversations with the quality of attention that allows you to notice when something someone says has a relevance that was not its intended relevance. When a casual mention of something in someone else's life lands differently than casual mentions usually land. When a name or an opportunity or a piece of information arrives through a relationship you already have rather than through a door you were expecting to open, the thread connects to something you did not know as part of the weave. That is the nature of the finest cloth. The most valuable elements are often the ones that were not deliberately placed, but that were drawn in by the tension and the structure of what surrounded them. Why quiet specifically? Because there are people in your life, genuinely good people, people who mean you nothing but good, whose relationship with their own financial reality will color what they say to you about yours in ways they are not entirely in control of. Someone who has been struggling financially for a long time cannot offer uncontaminated perspective on a large financial opportunity. They try, they love you, but the trying happens in a person who is also simultaneously measuring your opportunity against their own situation, feeling things about the gap, offering advice that is shaped below the level of their conscious intention by what they need to believe about how money works and who gets it and what it means about the people who get it. This is not their fault. This is the ordinary consequence of being a person with a financial reality advising another person with a different financial reality. The advice is filtered through the advisor's situation in ways that are invisible to the advisor and potentially expensive to the advisee. Similarly, someone who has experienced financial loss or who has witnessed financial gain followed by catastrophe will offer their caution as wisdom when it is actually scar tissue, will warn you about the risks with a specificity and an urgency that belongs to their history rather than to your situation, will install their own wound in your decision making process under the cover of caring about your well being. Neither of these people is your enemy. Neither of them should be excluded from your life or viewed with suspicion. But the formation stage of a significant financial development is not the moment to invite these perspectives into your interior. It is the moment to keep the weave tight, to protect the cloth from threads that belong to someone else's pattern, to maintain the integrity of your own vision long enough for it to become concrete. Once it is concrete, share freely. Concrete things can withstand perspective. Half-formed things cannot. The specific quality of the quiet you need. Not suppression, not the effortful, jaw-clenched silence of someone biting back news that wants to escape. That kind of quiet costs too much energy, energy that belongs to the building, not to the managing of what you are not saying. The quiet you need is the natural quiet of someone who is absorbed, occupied, genuinely focused on the work of what is forming, on the understanding of it, the positioning for it, the internal preparation for receiving something at a scale that your previous experience has not prepared you for. When you are absorbed in the actual substance of something, the not talking about it is not a discipline you have to impose. It is simply the byproduct of being focused elsewhere. Focus on the substance. What do you actually know about what is approaching? What are you not yet clear on? What would you need to understand better in order to receive it well? In order to position yourself accurately, to ask the right questions, to recognize the moment when the opportunity is fully in front of you rather than still approaching. Do that work in the quiet, without an audience, without the running commentary that sharing provides, which feels productive, but which often substitutes the social experience of talking about something for the private experience of actually thinking it through. Think it through fully, without company. The cloth is woven in solitude, it is displayed in public. You are in the weaving stage. What this requires you to believe that you are the kind of person this happens to. That is the actual work of this period, not the strategizing, not the positioning, not the tactical management of who knows what and when. The actual work is the interior work of making space for a reality that your history may not have prepared you to receive as something that belongs to you rather than to someone else. Large financial shifts require a container to land in. That container is self-concept. The understanding of yourself as someone whose life can contain this, not because you are special in a way that exempts you from the ordinary rules of financial reality, but because you have been building something, have been weaving something, have been doing the work in whatever quiet and unglamorous and unrewarded form it has taken, that produces the kind of value that eventually, not always, not automatically, but in the configurations that are currently aligning around you, gets recognized and compensated accordingly. You have been building. You may not have been calling it that. You may have been calling it surviving or maintaining or getting through. But from the outside, from the vantage point of whatever is approaching what looks like survival from the inside, looks like preparation from the outside. You prepared without knowing fully what you were preparing for. The thing you were preparing for is closer than it has ever been. The number, whatever number appears in connection with what is forming, whether it arrives as an offer, a calculation, a valuation, a recognition of what something is worth, that number is going to land larger than you have been trained to expect. When it does, and this is the quiet instruction that matters most in this entire reading, do not immediately shrink it. There will be an impulse, a reflex. The same reflex that has been calibrated by years of receiving less than the actual value delivered the reflex of the person who has learned that their first number is always too high, that expectations should be managed downward, that wanting too much produces disappointment, and wanting a reasonable amount produces a kind of manageable stability that feels safer than aspiration. That reflex was formed in conditions that no longer apply. Let the number exist in its full size before you do anything with it. Let it land. Feel the weight of it, the actual concrete, this is what this is worth weight of it. Resist the immediate move toward qualification, toward the conditions under which it might be smaller, toward the reasons it might not be as solid as it appears. Sit with the full size of it for as long as it takes to make peace with the full size of it. Then move. After the quiet, after the cloth is finished and held up to the light, and its value is confirmed, and the number has been received, and you have made peace with the full size of it. Then speak, not to announce, not to perform the abundance that is arriving, but because the people who matter will want to know, because the sharing of real things with the people who are genuinely in your life is one of the pleasures of having real things to share. Because abundance was always meant to move, to circulate, to generate more of itself through the quality of the life it funds and the relationships it enriches and the specific, irreplaceable way a person lives differently when the material constraint has been lifted, and what remains is the question of what they actually want. You will get to answer that question. Not yet, not in the formation stage, not while the weave is still being woven and the thread is still thin and the cloth has not yet been held up to the light. But soon, the thread is running. The weave is close to complete. Keep your hands steady. Keep your counsel close. And when the light catches what you have been building, let it be everything it actually is. Not the managed version, not the shrunk to fit version, the full cloth in all its worth